Welcome to Seeking Beyond. I'm Tara Antonellis. I am a professional Hellenistic astrologer with a splash of modern. I am certified in Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnosis. I'm a level 2 QHHT practitioner. I also do spirit release therapy in the background of soul centered healing. I'm a certified herbalist. I also read the tarot and I perform energetic healing such as Reiki. Thank you for tuning in. Here at Seeking Beyond, we talk about the paranormal, astrology, and metaphysical. Thank you for being here. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Seeking Beyond podcast. I have a special guest today, owner of Big Island UFO Tours and Mystic Manta LLC, best-selling author, Galactic Ambassador, Dr. Lisa Thompson. Thank you so much for being here.
I am so excited to have this conversation with you.
I was in Sedona and I passed your booth and I instantly gravitated to your work, and I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much. And my first question for you would be, how did you start? Where was the beginning? And how did you come along your spiritual path?
Okay, so it actually starts, I think, in my mother's womb, because as I now understand, there was quite a bit of tinkering being done when I was in the baking process. My body was having a hard time hanging on, and some of my ET guides were helping my body hang in there as my mother was actively trying to release me in unhealthy ways. And so, anyway, so as I grew up, my mother was very metaphysically spiritual. And so I was always exposed to the ideas that there's more than just this physical reality. And then when I was 13, we moved from Oklahoma City to Washington State to attend a spiritual school of enlightenment, the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And that was back in 1986. And so that was a real deep dive into understanding things, multidimensional, expanded consciousness, creating your reality, other non-physical things like ETs, fairies, dragons, that those actually were real. And then my first conscious memory of actually being taken onto a spacecraft was when I was 15. And I can go into that story if you want to hear about that. But
Absolutely. That is one of my questions is what was your first contact? So go right into it, please.
at the time, my mom and I, we were living on 20 acres outside of Olympia, Washington, and a little town called Yelm. And it was a nighttime experience. And so I was asleep. I don't remember how I got into the craft, but all of a sudden I wake up, I'm inside the spacecraft. And it was a smaller little shuttlecraft. It was just me and my ET guide. And when he picked me up, I didn't have any fear whatsoever because number one, he looked human. And number two, I felt like I knew him, like he was my friend. And so
Is he
we start,
Pleiadian?
well, actually, this is part of the story. I'll tell you.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, because he wasn't human at all. So, so then we're flying through space. We finally land where we were going. And when we got there, I asked him where we were. He said that we were inside of Io, one of Jupiter's moons. And then he started touring me around what looked like a hospital facility where I could see into different rooms. People were being examined, but nothing scary. But everyone looked really human. And so my next question to him was, are you human? Is everyone here human? And he said, no, those of you that we brought here are human. We are not. We are humanoid, but we disguise ourselves because our form tends to scare you. So then my next
Mm.
question to him was, okay, well, why are we here? Why am I here? And he said that those of us that had been chosen to be brought there were being tested to see if something happened to Earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something similar. Now, this was back in 1988, where we were still in the Cold War. We were on the verge of World War III. So there were definitely timeline potentials where something bad could have happened. So then at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like. because as a kid, I was obsessed with animals, and the weirder, the better. So I thought I could handle whatever form he showed me. So, what he looked like in his true form was he was about 7 feet tall. He had pure white skin, big dark eyes, and long red hair. And we're talking like
Mm.
fire engine red, a little different than human red hair. And then he had triads or triangles tattooed on his cheeks. So very extreme in his size and coloration, but completely benevolent. So then I get returned back home and I'm laying in my bed, just with this. I'm like, this is the weirdest dream I've ever had. My 15-year-old mind is like, okay, that was the weirdest dream. Now, with dreams, what I understand now is we forget details within the first 10 minutes of waking up. And I didn't forget this experience at all. And a few months later, then I was reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, which, if you've read that or know about it, it's his book that he wrote in 1987 about his experiences of being taken by gray ETs. And so mine was a very different experience than his. But at the end of the book, he's interviewing different people who had been taken. Now have the same kind of gray experience he's having, except for one guy had a completely different story where he was telling Whitley that he was taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And
Mm.
Whitley made a little side comment, kind of sarcastically. That's how I interpreted it, saying, I hope it isn't Io. And as soon as I read that, head to toe chills, tears starting coming down my face. So
Mm.
that was my body's way of knowing that
Confirmation.
yeah, that was a real experience. So then I went and told my mom, knowing that she would believe me because, again, we were part of this spiritual school, and she got really excited. And so then a few days later, she introduced me to another student at our school that had formerly worked very high clearance in the government. And he knew about some of the different ET races that our government knows about and works with. So I shared my story with him. And when I got to the part of describing him, he was like, I don't know that race. He said, but we don't know all of them. There are so many out there. But he said, you had a real experience. So I got my own validation. And then I also had that external validation, which was huge for me, not having to go through my life thinking I'm crazy. I made it up. It's
Right.
a dream. Yeah.
So did you receive gifts at this point and that young, or did you have to develop them over time with intention?
So that's a really, really actually interesting and good question because I had gifts throughout my childhood, but they were just so natural to me. I didn't know that they were gifts. But the other thing is that what we were being trained to do at the Ramtha School was really expand our consciousness to really elevate our frequency, our energy, to understand the multidimensional nature of ourselves, to understand that God is within us, that we are the creators of our reality. And so because we were actively doing these kind of processes throughout my teen years and in my 20s and early 30s, it's hard to tease apart like how much was this practice and these different modalities that we were learning versus what was just natural. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So what does an average day in the life of Lisa look like?
Oh, every day is a little bit different, especially now, because so I live here in Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii 4.5 years ago from Olympia, Washington. And so typically I wake up, I make my coffee, I feed my pets, and then I go and water my garden. That's one thing that I have been able to create over the last year and a half is a beautiful garden space at my house. And then I may do, you know, podcasts like this. I may speak for summits. I do a lot of creation. So I write, I've created 10 different Oracle card decks. And um, my business coach, she actually lives just 10 minutes away from me. So once a week, I'm down at her house and we are refining everything that I'm doing here on my mission so that I can expand the reach bigger. And on a good day, I get to go to the beach where I can really ground.
I am so jealous. I wish I lived in Hawaii. I have a question. Do you think there is healing waters in Hawaii, like a vortex similar to Sedona?
And there's definitely vortex energy, very similar to Sedona. Part of that is we have the most active volcano in the world here on this island, on the Big Island where I live. And that volcanic energy really stirs stuff up that wants to be revealed and healed. And so a lot of people who come to this island specifically, they're called here to do that healing. And so, and then of course, the ocean is very healing. Salt water itself is healing. But this energy, it gets churned up. And for those ready to face it, they're able to really do some massive healing here. Others cannot hang with the energy, kind of like they can't hang with the Sedona energy, and
Hmm.
it can break up relationships. It can really bring up even more mental illness
There's
issues.
the pot for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
And so,
almost like Moldavite.
right, some people can hang with it and others can't.
I
Yeah.
love it. Can you tell us about your gifts? What kind of channeling you do and how you do it? Tell us about that, please.
Okay, so this was a really interesting realization and experience. So, as I shared that story when I was 15, I did try to be normal most of my life to fit into mainstream society. And my original career, I have a PhD in evolutionary biology, marine biology, zoology. So I had to pretend to be really, really normal to be taken seriously. And then when I left academia, because it was not a good fit for me, um, I I actually ended up back at the Ramtha School. And so we were again really actively learning how to enhance our clair abilities. We were um, doing different practices where we were communicating with higher dimensional beings. We were being able to see through the dimensions, to pierce through and see things that couldn't be seen by maybe someone sitting next to us. And so that really started expanding me again. And then I ended up with my second husband, who I got shut down for a while because total skeptic, and it turned into a fight. So when
Mm.
I left that relationship, then I went back into myself. I had to rediscover my self love, my worthiness, and start working on allowing myself to unfold. Well, that led to me starting Mystic Manta 8 years ago, where the very first modality I got trained in was past life regression therapy. And I know you're a QHHT practitioner.
Yes.
And
Wonderful.
yeah, and so what that did was it really opened the door for me to start having memories, like uh, like true memories coming back to me of that these different parallel lifetimes that I was living. And so I was clairvoyantly experiencing them. I was hearing things. I was feeling things. And then back October of 2018, I started taking a psychic intuition class that lasted several months. And on the first night of class, my teacher, Lisa, she led us through a meditative journey to meet a spirit guide that would help us get extra information if we needed it. Now,
Beautiful.
I was already trained in regression, and so I had met some different spirit guides, but humans and animals only. But this time, I went to a different realm, and in front of me were the most beautiful blue-skinned beings. And their message to me was, "You are one of us. We are one of you. We are family." And then they gave me a gift of a crystal, and we were to ask if they had a name that they wanted to be called. And there was one that was the spokesperson that was to the front among the group of them. And the name that was given was Uluru. And so I didn't know who they were, but I came out of the journey and everyone's going around class sharing who their guides are. Everyone had humans, but I'm describing these blue beings. And there happened, synchronistically happened to be a lady in class who knew some of the different ET races and what they look like. And so when I described him, she was like, that sounds like either the blue avians or the Arcturians. So I had to go home and Google what that was because I didn't know at that point. I was still trying to be really normal. And so
Hmm.
when I saw the artistic renditions of the Arcturians, it's exactly what I saw in this journey. And so that validated that. Now, throughout this class that I was taking, it was every single week, I was having more and more galactic beings come to me. And I didn't know, like I still lived in Olympia. I was running my home staging interior design company simultaneously to my spiritual business. So I still am, again, trying to be normal, but I didn't know, like, okay, why are all these galactic things coming to me? And it wasn't until I moved here to Hawaii and I started my UFO tour business that I started understanding what was going on. So what I discovered was that Uluru, the spokesperson, is actually me in my Arcturian form. So I was meeting myself. And in that realm, I am a master healer. And so that crystal that was given to me, that sends the healing frequency from the Arcturian realm down here to me, Earth Lisa. And I have gotten a physical crystal, a big Lemurian crystal here that receives that transmission. And I just naturally do that. And so that energy, not only is it healing me, but it's also propagating out into the environment and to Earth and the people, my clients, anyone that I'm coming into contact with that higher frequency. So that was that was pretty cool. But then also 3 years ago, I actually had a QHHT session done because there was a gal who had just gotten trained and she needed to get her practice in.
Yeah.
And one of the lives that I got to experience was my life during the time of the building of the pyramids. And I wasn't human. I was one of the ETs. In fact, I was Syrian and I was a genetic engineer. And so I got to fully experience this life of being this genetic engineer and sending down the frequency to upgrade the human body so that they could run more consciousness and hold more energy. And we also had an experiment on another planet. So here on Earth, there were those of us boots on the ground teaching the humans how to do different spiritual practices, including the sound thought levitation process of the megalithic structures. But then our other experiment was that we were not teaching that group of people anything. We were just sending out the frequency to upgrade their body. So the difference was that us teaching the humans ended up to that catapulting into power and control and the fall ultimately of the civilization, where the ones that we left alone ended up spiritually evolving to stay in touch with nature, to be harmonious with each other, kind of like Avatar, actually, how
Wow.
they were living with the land. And
I have
so,
actually had people coming through my sessions talking about this, so that's quite interesting. I
yeah,
also wanted to add before you go further, interestingly enough, in my QHHT sessions, when I started to unravel my own galactic origins, I was told that I was from Arcturus, and I had to Google Arcturus as well because I wasn't aware of it. So the validation that you get when you have no idea what they're talking about is
right.
amazing. So
Yeah.
just thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so then, um, 2022, I because I was sharing some of my experiences and stories on my UFO tours, I actually then started writing information down and putting it out as blogs. And some of my friends, I'd written other books, but some of my friends were like, I feel a new book coming on. And so that catapulted me into writing Connection to the Cosmos, Remembering Your Galactic Heritage and Embracing Your Oneness. And during the writing of that, my Arcturians, they wanted to start channeling through me. Now, I did have hesitation at first because I grew up in the Ramtha School of Enlightenment, which Ramtha is a channeled ascended master, channeled through Jay Z Knight. And back in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, channeling was still weird, very fringe. And but I had watched Ruben Langdon's interviews with EDs on Gaia, and all of these different channelers that he was interviewing, and they were doing their channeling methods, and it helped me to be okay, like, okay, I'm not going to be a super weirdo if I let this happen. So I had to relax into it. But when I realized I'm just simply channeling myself from that Arcturian realm, then it became much easier. There was no fear around it because I knew what kind of frequency it was, that it was not going to be anything negative, nothing polarized. And so once I got used to that energy, then beginning of 2023, they were like, okay, it's time to bring in some of your other groups, your other aspects. And so the first part of 2023, I led 13 different sessions, bringing in 13 different higher dimensional galactic races, including the Arcturians. And I didn't know what was going to come through. I just had to trust. And I, again, when I realized that it was just me in these other forms, then I didn't have anything to fear. Now, what's interesting is that after that, so I wrote my book, Wisdom of the Galactics, Channeled Messages to Elevate Your Life, from those sessions. But September of 2023, my husband, who at the time was the love of my life, he committed suicide.
I'm
And
so sorry.
it was completely out of the blue. And, fortunately, with all the spiritual understanding that I have, I was able to handle it, I think, a little bit differently than other people would have. But the next morning after finding him, and I was staying, I was actually in the middle of leading a galactic retreat when he did this. And so I had a condo or a set of condos that I rented out for me and my retreat guests. So I was at the condo sitting out on the lanai just by myself, and I was talking to the trees and nature. And I was like, okay, really, guys, we had to have it this extreme. And the message that came back to me was that, yes, in order for me to fully be on my mission, my path that I'm meant to do here in this life, his energy couldn't be in my space anymore. And so it was like this massive timeline shift. And, what's interesting is a few years before that, I was having premonitions that he wasn't going to live a long life. And I didn't know why. I was trying to get those ideas out of my head, but I thought, okay, he's just going to create some disease or he's going to get killed on his motorcycle. I never thought it would be suicide. And so what's been interesting is that he's been coming through from the other side, as our loved ones do, and sharing messages, saying, like, okay, how I was kind of on the fence about all the spiritual stuff, and understand and do. And even with the ETs, he was like, keep doing what you're doing. It's all real. And he's like, I can help guide you from the other side much more so than I could in the physical. And so knowing how multidimensional we really are, that's really over the last year and a half plus since his passing, helped me really catapult into this greater awareness of our multidimensional selves, and knowing that, okay, this is what I need to be here speaking about, what my ETs want me to be speaking about, so that when we do finally have open contact as the Galactic Ambassador, I can help bridge humanity with the perhaps strangeness of these groups that might not look like us.
That's such a beautiful perspective. And I give you so much kudos for your strength. Um, what does your intuition say regarding open contact? And is it coming soon?
Well, so as you probably know from your QHHT sessions, that all timelines are existing simultaneously at the quantum level. And so right now, we have so many different timeline potentials that we as humans here can experience. And so it really is going to be about where the focus, where the attention is. And so, yeah, I know Dolores Cannon talked about splitting of Earth into 5D and then staying in 3D polarized fear-based reality, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that we are in the time period where this is really starting to tease itself apart. So what my higher dimensional ETs for the last 4 years have been telling me is, number one, for me to stay out of the news, stay out of the media, stay out of politics, stay out of anything polarizing, to really maintain my own higher vibrational reality, create my own environment, operate from a place of joy, kind of like Bashar says, to follow your passion and do that, right? Stay so focused on that. And don't let anything in the background kind of distract you, because where your attention goes, that is the reality that you're going to create. So for me, and hopefully you and the people in my environment, we are definitely on this timeline where we're going to have open contact, perhaps within the next 2 years, even 2 to 10 years. There's some wiggle room. But when I lead my UFO tours, we see stuff all the time. They want to be seen, they want to be known. They can't go against our free will. So the more that people are starting to understand, okay, this is real. Us ET people are not crazy tinfoil hat wearing people like back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, that people thought that we were. Government disclosure is helping, and though people's own personal experiences, that's way more important than government disclosure in my experience, my understanding. And so the more that people are opening up their minds to this, then that can be their experience as well.
Well, how would you give advice about navigating conspiracy theories or not theory? Basically, there's a fine line between activism and getting sucked into the matrix and creating your own reality. How do you navigate that?
So very in my younger years, I was an activist. I was very political. I had very strong opinions about what was right, what was wrong. I judged others who didn't think the same way. But I was a champion of the underdog, women and LGBTQ kind of rights, and um, any kind of minority group. I was always a champion for. And it's not that I'm not now, but my ETs they said you need to see this from the higher perspective. And so some of the teachings that they gave to us is like, okay, again, all these realities are existing, and we are multidimensional. We are not just this one earth human life. We can shift things, we can timeline shift. And so even though there are, yes, some realities where these conspiracy theories really are existing, but again, if you're putting your attention there, then you're going to be caught up in that. And so for me, shifting my attention to what am I creating in my life? Again, maintaining that joy and coming from a place of love, seeing that there is no good or bad, there is no right or wrong. We all have this soul contract agreement that we're playing out with each other, and we have free will, and we can shift timelines. And when we shift to those timelines, then there's a new past, a new story behind that. We're able to let go of the old. And so there are people out there teaching about more of the kind of 3D fear-based ET kind of stuff, and the good versus the bad and the white hats and all that, and the children and all the things. And it's not that that isn't happening in some of these timeline realities, but like for me, that is not where my attention goes. It is from that higher perspective.
Thank you so much. Okay, so do you have any stories of resistance where it seems like a person was resistant or was struggling or couldn't be broken through? I'm curious about how you're encountering difficult individuals.
Difficult in terms of understanding about the ETs or something different?
Like your healing method. Have you ever experienced them in resistance and what was that like?
Okay, yes, definitely. In fact, early on when I was doing sessions, I was working with a very, very good friend. And, as you probably know, the more that the people trust us, that we can guide them, the more they can relax into it and they can receive their answers. Well, this friend, she absolutely trusted me, but we got to a certain point in the session where she just came up against this black wall and she could not go further. She was not ready to go further. She actually knew that it wasn't me, it was her that was creating this block. And so she, with that information, she knew she had to do some deeper healing for herself in other kinds of modalities in order for her to then relax more into that subconscious mind where she could get beyond the black wall. And so after a few years, we tried again, and she was able to get much further than she was. Most of the time, my clients, they are able to fully relax into it. It's only very randomly if someone is just really like their ego. It's like their ego is like, no, we're not letting go. We have to be in control. And so I think the more probably traumatized people have been in this earth life, the more of that resistance that tends to hold them back from relaxing into it. What's been your experience with that? I'm curious.
Very similar. It's usually always the ego. There has been some people that I've encountered blocks with, and that was going to lead me to my next question. Um, what do you think about evil? Do you believe it exists? And do you believe that attachments are possible?
Okay, so what we would label as evil, um, yes, we have polarity here in this Earth experience. Part of third, fourth dimensional reality is polarity is one of the laws of those dimensions. And so what now I understand is that what we might label or judge as evil or as good, really those are just experiences that people have signed up for that gives them experience. And so again, from the higher perspective, there really is no good or bad, positive or negative. Polarization is simply a mechanism of evolution to help us gain the wisdom to learn lessons and evolve and grow. Now, some people get stuck in that, but part of getting stuck in those lower frequency vibrations, yes, there are entities and things living in those lower vibrational realms that can attach, but also we are all connected. We are all one. And so those attachments actually are already part of that person. They're just expressing it. They're feeling like it's separate and then attached, but it's all part of them from my understanding.
Very interesting explanation. I like it a lot. How do you feel about psychedelics?
Well, so I went to the Evergreen State College, which is very much like left kind of hippie kind of school. And we had psychedelic shrooms growing on our campus. And so back in college, I did do LSD one time. I did shrooms a couple times. I think that now with the progression of what we understand about them, that they can really help people expand their minds and consciousness. So can meditation, though. And so, again, there's no right or wrong in how someone wants to do this, how they want to open the doors to understanding these higher dimensional realities, and that there is more to this physical 3D earth life. Um, and so, I think if done in a non abusive way, it can be a beautiful way to open the doors, but it's not for everyone.
And can you tell us about some of the ET races that you do channel? I know that you spoke about the one from Jupiter's moon.
So actually, I don't channel them. That's a group that okay, so this is kind of interesting. So there are different people like Craig Campobasso who have written these ET species almanac kind of books documenting these different ET races and where they come from, what they look like, what their belief systems are. And so when I was trying to figure out who is this group from Io, because like the Arcturians, so many people know the Arcturians, they've experienced them, but I had never heard anyone talking about the Io group. And so I was trying to find out who are these beings and like why, what was my connection to them? Well, so I have quite a few psychic medium friends. And so one of my friends, Lee, I was working with him about 4 years ago. And I was like, Lee, can we try to pull them forward and get information about who they are? So they did come forward, and what they said was that they're not part of any of the galactic federations. They're very neutral, and they don't actually work with many humans here on Earth. That's not their role, but they are connected to the Arcturians. The Arcturians are these higher vibrational energetic beings. They're not physical in the same way we are. And so this group from Io, they are connected with the Arcturians. And so my Arcturian self and family were they basically charted them to watch over me as Earth Lisa because they are way more physical like we are. So that was an interesting discovery. And the reason why I felt like I knew him when he picked me up was because I'd been with him throughout my childhood. They let me remember that experience when I was 15 because of the circumstance of being at the Ramtha school, right place, right time, emotional maturity, getting that, government guy to validate it as well. So it's just like the perfect storm. Now, the other groups that have come through, so I mentioned the Syrian experience from the QHHT session. So that is one of the groups that actually comes through vocally, but also as healing energy. So the other one that comes through in the healing sessions are the mantis beings. They're
Beautiful.
one of my favorites. I love the mantis.
I haven't actually shared my contact on here yet, but I've had my own experience with the mantis beings. I wonder if they're connected with the Octurians, because both of my experiences were with the ones that you're connecting with. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of connection.
Well, I think they're all really connected. And so those are the three with my healing that come through. Now the other ones would be the Andromedans, the Orions, the Pleiadians, the Zetas, they're higher dimensional reptilians, the Agarthans, who are the inner earth beings, the hybrid children. In fact, I do have hybrid children. I know that as a Zeta, I would have been like, yes, I want to come to Earth, be this human. I want to volunteer for the hybrid program. Sign me up. And so I know there are a lot of people who have fear around that hybridization program and misunderstanding of it. But again, me, I volunteer. Sign me up. And then the vegans, the blue avians, these are all some of the groups that have come through.
Have you gotten any information about the hybridization program channeled by chance?
Yeah, well, so um, my my original understanding came through other channelers first, but then I got some confirmation around that with my own experiences. So for your audience if they don't know what that is. So the Zetas as a race were basically going extinct. They had bred out all their emotions, and so they became a completely mental, logical kind of race. That created them being sterile. And so they had to clone themselves. But again, just having that cloning process, they were dying out. So they realized the errors of their way, and us being a beautiful mixture of different ET races. We supposedly we have up to 22 different galactic races in our DNA. We may even have more. And so we are this beautiful kind of mixture in our galaxy, which is very unusual. And we still have our emotions. And so the Zetas decided to pair up with the humans to create this hybridization program where they take the best parts of the Zeta DNA, the best parts of the human DNA, and create a spiritually advanced hybrid race that the Zetas can reincarnate into, humans can reincarnate into, but it's a new vehicle. It's basically the evolution of us as humans.
Lovely. So I had a friend actually ask a question, and I'm just curious how you would respond to it. The world is an interesting place where there are larger divide gaps between groups who simply don't see or can't see perspectives beyond themselves. We are told that they are on their own journey and also that time is an illusion. So, why does it seem like there is a deadline or a constraint to achieve healing or some elevated level of energy work?
Okay, that's a really good question. And so everyone is on their own journey for sure, and there is no right or wrong timing, but some of us came here to Earth to be part of this massive shift into the fifth dimensional way of living. And I think for those of us that know that, we feel like this push, like, okay, we have to do this now, it's urgent. But then there are other people that are completely oblivious. They will not be awakened in this human lifespan that they're living in. But because this is an ongoing process, perhaps in another life, they come back and they are awakened and then they feel that push. So time is an illusion. There is no past, there is no future. All timelines are existing simultaneously, truly at the quantum level. And so it really, for me, I don't feel a push. What I feel is easing into the flow of where I'm supposed to be. And by being in that flow, there are new things that pop up where I'm like, oh, I thought I healed that. And then I'm like, okay, more, let's go deeper, let's go deeper. So it's more like the spiral as opposed to like, oh, I'm completely healed. Because if I was, well, I would be an enlightened ascended master. And so that's part of what we come here to Earth to experience. And so really, um, one of the ways that through the Orion session, actually, I thought this was really interesting. They wanted us to see Earth like an amusement park, where the different continents represent different kinds of, like at Disney World, where you've got these different things and then you've got rides within there. So you've got 8 billion different possibilities of rides that you can go on. Some rides are easier, some rides are a little more challenging or emotional, like, loop-de-loop roller coasters or the spinny ones that make you sick. And so because we are infinite beings, we are multidimensional beings, we come here and in other worlds as well, come here to experience things, to feed that information back to source. So the more that we can understand that and understand that, okay, someone else has this perspective, but they grew up in a completely different way. And so rather than us judging them for that, let us just honor their choice that they made. And the other thing is that the more that we can heal our own judgment of ourselves, then we stop judging other people, because what we're judging is simply a reflection. It's a mirror reflection that we have more to heal within ourselves. And so again, really, there is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. The other kind of analogy that was given to me back in 2022 when I was writing Connection to the Cosmos was to look at, let's say, the universe or all that be as a disco ball. And if we think of the individual mirror fragments of the disco ball, so each mirror fragment would be me and you and the other person next to us. So we're all on this disco ball that represents source. And those of us on the disco ball that are closer together, we have a very similar perspective of reality because we're looking at generally the same kind of thing in the same way. Those on the opposite side of the disco ball have a completely different reality, a different perspective, but it all is real. It is all true. So it's just depending on what mirror you're looking out of. So if people can understand that all realities are existing, everything is true because it's based on the perception of that person, right? And so with that, if we can let go of our judgment, then we can operate from more of a place of compassion, empathy, and love.
Mic drop. That was beautiful. Okay, one of my last questions. What role do you believe authenticity plays with our purpose?
Authenticity is everything because, and I can tell you this from 52 years of life experience so far, um, and going through in my first 50 years, 4 careers, 3 husbands, and 2 kids. I have lived a lot of life. I have felt like I needed to hide who I was for most of my life, to be taken seriously in my careers or to not be shunned from society. And when I moved here to Hawaii, I was able to let go of all of that. I finally realized the saying that what other people think of me is none of my business, and shedding the masks and fully stepping into who I came here to be. I am a galactic ambassador. I do communicate with ETs. I am ET. And I have like, that has been so freeing. I mean, seriously, like in letting all of the other stuff go, I have reverse aged. I feel healthier. I look younger than I did before I moved here. Like everything changes when you step into your full authenticity.
You are an absolute inspiration. Thank you so much. Is there a message that you would like to leave with the collective today?
Just remember who you really are. You are more than this one earth life. You are an infinite being with infinite possibilities. Love yourself, let go of the judgments of yourself, and operate from a place of joy. And when you do that, you will create a beautiful life that is coming from a higher frequency state.
Thank you. Do you have any new projects coming up? Go ahead and plug yourself. Tell us about your books. Where can people find you?
Okay, thank you so much. So my newest book came out in January, and that is Awakening to Your Multidimensional Self, Harnessing Energy, Timelines, and Higher Consciousness. I also have an Oracle card deck that I created to go with that. In fact, I have 10 Oracle card decks that I've created over the last 6 years. And I've got my other books, Connection to the Cosmos and Wisdom of the Galactics. I do have a brand new free gift that I am so excited to offer, which is called my Multidimensional Awakening Kit. And what this is 5 high frequency meditative journeys to help you do the things that I was sharing today, to release the fear and judgment, to raise your vibration, to connect with your higher dimensional guides, to create heaven on earth, and to shift to your desired timeline. It also comes with an ascension workbook. So that can be found at awakenactivatenow.com. I'm also at drlisajthompson.com and bigislandUFOtours.com. And I'm on Instagram, uh, Dr. Lisa Thompson _author, and on Facebook, Dr. Lisa Thompson. So, and my YouTube is Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson. So I'm out there, and whether your interest is in the galactic work or healing work or anything else, later this year, I will have a certification in my infinity healing method, which is what my ETs have given me. And so really I'm helping to activate others to do beautiful healing work.
Oh, I'm interested in that. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.